Hey Tracy,
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing dandy.
That's awesome.
Where are you?
I'm in Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Oh, another tennis. I've been on calls today with two people from the South and the Southwest.
Oh
That is
wow.
so rare.
Oh yeah. Well, so I don't actually live here. I've been so my story is that right now I'm like digital nomading across the country.
But you're
So
there.
yeah, I'm here now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm in Western Arkansas,
Very
just a
cool.
stone's throw from Oklahoma. So yeah, I feel like a southern nomad around here. There
Yeah.
just aren't many in this area. So
Yeah, I've loved the South so far. It's like the food's great and people are so nice and it's not as cold as where I'm from, which is New York. And so I could, after I'm done traveling, I could see myself settling in somewhere south.
yeah, yeah. I'm really fascinated by your work.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out.
yeah. Um, I, I I struggle a little bit with some of the cool tech stuff, and frankly, I'm not even sure I've downloaded some of your uh, scripts correctly yet. I hit the pause button on experimentation as I finished out my Rome course, and I still have some cleanup work to do, but my brain's kind of getting antsy, wanting to learn
Yeah.
something new. Um, but I have not played with some of them yet, and ordinarily I would have done that before the interview. So I do apologize for that.
No, no sweat it. I'm always happy to like follow up or respond through Twitter. I've been helping a bunch of users through Twitter DMs. It's kind of funny how I'm using Twitter as like a CRM, but uh,
I
I've been
know.
it's yeah. So I've been just mostly been monitoring Twitter and like helping out users who've been struggling with installing or using some of the extensions. Um, and like I have like a background thread of like how can we like make it easier to use and like reduce the friction of like installing any given one. Um, some of that work will probably
Interesting.
have to come from the Rome side, but also some of it could be like something that we could build as like the Rome developers to make that easier.
Yeah. Ultimately, what do you want to do with all of this?
Yeah, that's sort of that's sort of a big question. I I do yeah. So part of my backstory is that 2 months ago I left my job to basically work on more open source software, and so the goal is to like make open source development a sustainable job in of it itself. And
Nice.
so uh, I don't long term I don't see myself as like the Rome guy, but more as like the open source guy, and just was just like the first community that I saw that I knew I could make an impact and start developing for. And so I just started creating a bunch of extensions that I thought I would want, and then sharing those on like Slack and Twitter. Those started gaining momentum, and then I started just like asking users directly, like what are some of the features that you guys want, and like because I got through like some of the base ones that I wanted, and figured okay now I can like build on this momentum to figure out what is it that other users want and go from there. But yeah, like it right now, like Rome, like a lot of my time is focused on Rome tools, but long term, I sort of have like like a more broader, like open source
I like it.
ambition.
Well, before we dive into the actual journaling part, I do get a lot of questions about the broader scope of Rome. So I am interested in uh, the scripts that you're creating and the problems that they solve. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so people are very subjective about like what they use Roam for because it's such a baseline tool. They only have like a couple like features here and there, but like those couple of features like unlock a different way of like thinking about like your data and like how you use like the different pieces of information in your world. And so a lot of the features that I've created have fallen into like two basic categories. One category of features have been like integration. So like how do I connect Roam with like the rest of the other services I use? So things like Google Calendar or Twitter or GitHub, like how do I bring in like the other parts of my life into like what I'm calling like my second brain in Roam. And then the other category of features have been just like user quality of life, like UI touch ups and changes. So things like being able to create an emoji directly in Roam, or be able to like sort query results and or linked references because that wasn't provided out of the box. Um, the way that like web dev works, you can like very easily like query elements in Roam or like in any website that you're on and be able to create like UI elements on top of it, next to it, and manipulate the DOM as long as like the website itself is like allowing you to do that, which Roam has allowed us to do with like the Roam JS block.
Isn't that unusual that that Connor, one of the creators of Rome, comes in and looks at work that creators like you are doing and goes nuts, not only bragging on the usability, but then I saw a tweet the other day about something, and he said, "This is terrific, and if I do some things under the hood differently, now I can make your life easier." Is that unusual?
Yeah, it's a mentality that I love personally because it's emblematic of what I think is positive sum thinking. Whereas like just because me or Rome Hacker like develop certain features does not mean it like takes away from Rome. We build on each other, and like we can like when I see now other users like following our lead to like build their own extensions, I don't get sad because like, oh, that's one less extension I could write. I get ecstatic because it's like, oh wow, that's like something else in the community, and now I'm freed up to work on bigger problems. And that's sort of like the mentality that the Rome engineers have taken, is that like if they unlock, you know, hackers to be able to pick off like the low hanging fruit, then the Rome team themselves can focus on the bigger problems, like what they call the like unsolved problems.
Can you quickly walk me through what some of your scripts do, like the very specific problems that people are saying, yeah, uh, this helps me a ton.
Okay, so I'm gonna assume that you're able to see.
We're good.
Uh, yeah, so there's a few things. So one of my I mentioned before, this was stuff that I had planned for like the journaling stuff. Some of the features are like I can like now just type in emojis here like that, and like the menu auto populates. I don't have to like go copy and paste from somewhere else. Um, Another thing. So I created. Yeah, let's go to my brother.
Your homepage looks different too. Your daily notes page.
Oh, so that's that. So this is a specific block.
Okay. All right.
So this is
Okay.
yeah. So this is my daily notes page, and then
Okay.
this is a specific page within daily notes or a
All right.
specific block. If I go to like my brother, so he has like a bunch of different references here. And one thing I added was this sort icon up here in the top right. And so I can sort by like daily note, or sort by daily note descending, or by page title descending, page title. And that basically just orders, the page references in an order based on like whatever the user would find useful. So a lot of people use this for like task management if they want to like, order by like daily note descending, uh, because maybe they want the latest to dos first before like going down their to-do list. They can sort it in this way.
That is incredibly useful.
Yeah,
Sure.
and so we have like the same thing with attribute. So I don't know if you're familiar with attribute tables.
It's all right.
Yeah, but there's a feature in Realm called added table, and
Hmm.
basically it like generates a table for you, And once that table is generated, there was like now also like sort icons in each of the columns. So that now you can like sort the rows of your table by different columns. And then another developer in the community, Sean Murphy, took my script and built on top of it, building filtering capabilities. So now you can like filter the rows in your table by like certain criteria, by certain text, by before or after a certain date. So it's just like another one of those examples of like the community like building on each other and like more of like a positive sum, positive sum thinking.
Cool. Well, thanks for working with me on that. And I really hadn't expected to have you walk through that, but it's just brilliant work, and it's helpful. So I just kind of thought it would be okay to showcase that. So thanks for going with me on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Now I'm super interested in a couple of things on your web page. The Longwave, it's a journal sharing app, and part of my journaling experience is group journaling in person in a small group setting where we answer the questions on our own, self-reflection, and then we come together at the end of that week, and we do not converse. We simply sit in a circle and read our responses. There
Wow,
is, yeah,
that's
there,
incredible.
yeah, there is not any conversation about it. It's us learning to listen to each other. It is getting things off our chest that we probably didn't even know was in our hearts or our heads.
Yeah,
And over the course of 9 months to a year, that same small group of women, and guys do this too. We just do the same gender, so that it's a very safe community. We grow and we learn. And so when I saw Longwave, I was fascinated by the story behind this project and why you wanted to create what I think can be a powerful tool.
there was problems in two spaces that we saw: problems in journaling and problems in social media. And Longwave was our sort of solution to like both of these problems. So to go more in depth, the problems in journaling we saw were twofold. One, there's often like a lack of personal accountability. So a lot of journaling apps, it's like a solo adventure. So you'll fire up the app. Maybe you'll do it for like the first couple days, and maybe the app has like notifications to like remind you. But usually reminders are like not enough. You'll like put it off. You'll have other priorities take precedence, and then you don't follow through with this habit that actually ends up being like very powerful for people. And then there's a second problem with journaling, which is like you're writing into the abyss, where if you are someone who's like diligent with a journal, it's sort of you're like recording all your thoughts in this book or this app, but then because no one else sees it, you almost feel in some cases less motivated to maybe go into depth or like explain your thoughts or go into any detail of like what it is that you're feeling or thinking. So those were like the problems with journaling. Problems with social media include the first being that most social media apps are optimized for engagement. And this is because a lot of their revenue comes from advertising. And so for them to make money, you need to be on the app for as much as possible, click around stuff, like basically be in front of advertising as a user as much as possible. And then that's how a social media app will make money off of you. Because you as people are the product, not the social media app. And then the second problem we saw with social media was that interactions are mostly shallow. If you think of like a tweet, it's only 140 characters. You just like say like the sickest burn or like reply in a way that like a bunch of people could like. And, there's like mob mentality and all these like undesirable properties that people are talking about and discussing today, especially with like an election in a couple of weeks. And so those were the big problems we saw. Um, and then came Longwave. So in a previous internship, I worked at a company that like had us basically write like a self-reflection at the end of each workday. And then the next morning we came into work and we saw that self-reflection from like all the interns like in an email digest. So when I left that job, well, because I went back to school, but when I went back to school after that internship, uh, my friend and I, we thought like, wait, this could be like this like experience that this company had us do. This could be like its own app. This like could solve all these like problems with like journaling and social media that I mentioned, and could actually be a real, uh, solution that like groups of friends could find useful. And so that's how like Longwave was born. We started working on it during school. Then project changed hands a bit, and now it's still something that's live. But actually, there was a previous iteration that was called Cetacea, which was like the first version of it. And then we basically rewrote it to be like now it's called Longwave.
So how does one subscribe to that? And then what happens when you subscribe and you start placing entries in Longwave?
Yeah, let me do another screen share here
Right.
to demo some of Longwave. Like I said, so Longwave is basically a group journaling experience, and the way that it solves the problems that I mentioned before is like morning digest. The morning digest that you get every morning is meant to like motivate you to journal the next day. Knowing that people that you're close to are reading your journals should also motivate you to continue journaling. The funding model is paying by group, so that it's not based on advertising. So Longwave as a product is not optimized for engagement. It just optimizes, for like as good a group experience as possible. And then there's like a one journal max per day, and this is supposed to incentivize deeper interactions. Because if you only have one day to think about what you want to either respond to in a previous journal or like what going on this day, you'll take a much longer time thinking about what you want to write, and it's not like a quick response to something that happened.
So that's another feature, is that it slows your brain down enough so that you're not emotionally reacting necessarily. You're responding thoughtfully.
Yeah, because the no one's gonna read it until the next morning. Like no one can read your journal for that day to the next morning. So you almost have the whole day to think about and like continue iterating on this journal until other people read it.
Mm.
So this is Longwave. This is the app I have here. Cool. So on the main homepage, you can like there's like a how it works page that goes into a lot of what I talked about at a high level. There's also a manifesto that talks about why it exists, what our motivation was for making it. Cool. So when you log in, you're immediately brought to the journal page, and the UI is meant to be like as simple as possible. And so you can start, just like write your journal. It's just a simple text box and text. There's an indicator on the bottom right that like tells you while it's saving and when the journal is saved, so that you can have the confirmation that your journal is like submitted to Longwave. And then on the top here are like the different groups that I'm in. So as you can see, I'm in two groups. One is an actual group with my friends, and the other group is like this. It's just like a test group that I use to, test features on the app and make sure things are working. And on the bottom here, as you see, it says sends at 7 a.m. So what Longwave does is that it takes everyone's journal from the day, and then from the previous day, and then at 7 a.m. it sends it in as an email digest with everyone's journal on that email.
What kind of aha moments or eureka moments do you have inside your group generally? Has there been
Yes.
one thing that you went, ah?
Yeah. So it's mostly like a great way to just keep in touch with friends that we're no longer living with. So that group in particular is 5 of us who were all in the same fraternity in college. We don't interact with instant message that more any day to day, but like now throughout throughout the weeks, throughout the months, we get updated on like important life decisions and or like noticeable like moments in their lives. And so like I was able to read about my friend's like frustration in trying to move during like this coronavirus time and like figure out like what apartment he wanted to move to. Another friend was in between jobs and he was like wrestling with this decision for like weeks on end. I at one point like reached out to him, giving him like my take. Like I like texted him after reading about it that morning, giving him my take of like if I was in your position, these are like the factors I would consider. Uh, and then sometimes it's just like a funny thing that happened that day. It was like this is like hilarious. I can't believe this happened to me, and they shared like the story with everyone. Um, I'm also gonna, while you ask the next question, I'm gonna see if I can pull up an example email to like show you what it looks like. Oh,
It's
like
not
one with
it's not really a question, it's an observation that you reached out to your friend and instead of telling him what to do, you gave him factors to consider. That is a very good friend.
thank you. Uh, yeah, I mean it's just the type of things people uh, when you like know that like your close friends are going to be like reading the journal the next day, I like almost sense myself like spend more time on like what I'm saying and like phrasing it in a way that other by phrasing it in a way such that other people could understand what I'm saying. I'm also phrasing it in a way to make sure that I understand what I'm saying, because it's very easy to get into these like spirals where you have these like trail of thoughts. They're not very cohesive, and as a result, you come to like ridiculous conclusions. But in order to like by forcing yourself to put it in a way that other people can understand, you also reaching like a deeper a level of understanding for yourself.
Yeah. Has it helped you make some decisions about your life?
Yeah. So I'm currently not employed. So like I'm currently like self-employed and doing, like I mentioned in the earlier in the interview, like I'm trying to see if I can turn open source into like a sustainable career. And like that transition was one that like started in March and didn't actually take place until August. And throughout that whole, 5 months, there were definitely various journals at different stages of my thought process of like researching like why it was I wasn't currently happy at my job and what was it that I was like currently looking for. How can I frame like what I'm looking for into something that I could actually like create or produce or make money from. And so yeah, and like being able to share that with like my close friends definitely helped in like steering me into like where I am now.
In that process, were there some specific questions or types of questions that you asked yourself and then answered in this group journaling process?
Well, man, yeah, I think it was mostly like there were two main questions I was thinking. One was like a question of focus, and one was a question of like was what I was doing really like was the fact that I wasn't happy with what I'm doing a symptom of like the job or a symptom of like the type of work I do, and I'll go into each of those more concretely. Um, the question of focus was like I would be doing my job each day and then like going home and like working on like A, B, or C. And I like continually struggled with like, am I not happy with my job because I'm focusing on A, B, and C, or am I not happy with A because I'm like spread out between B and C, um, and not really sure like how like am I spreading myself out too thin? Am I like too like diverged? And being able to read about like other people like how like they're thinking about their projects or their side project or like how they're working through. So like no, I don't think people like obviously no one's going to give you like here's the answer, here's how you should act, but just by reading about other people's experiences, I can like then reflect on my own and be like, okay, this is how, person X is dealing with their situation. What can I draw from that situation to apply to my own life?
Hmm,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So I don't think it's like anyone will like directly answer or directly respond to a question that you're having. Though sometimes they might. Sometimes like I have one friend who will be like, at David, here's like my reaction to this, or at you know, friend B, here's my reaction to this. But most of the like answers, quote unquote, that I get are not necessarily like directly answers to questions, but just getting an insight into like how people are thinking about,
Mm.
not even thinking about, reflecting on their own lives.
Do you do any uh, private journaling, like inside Rome, at all, or is this enough for you?
Yeah, so I don't do any extra journaling outside of Longwave. So my daily notes page will usually have a bunch of like tasks that I'm doing today, and then also a like stream of consciousness on the bottom tag, and then on the in the stream of consciousness, I'll like usually timestamp it and then note something random that came up during the day. So like if I had a
So is
conversation,
it a bit of an interstitial journal then?
I'm sorry.
Is it a bit of an interstitial journal then?
What do you mean by I haven't? I'm not familiar with interstitial.
It's just time stamping random thoughts, and uh, it it's just a free form kind of a day log.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so then you finish this, and then it helps you mentally task switch.
So Rome is very like operational, or like I guess operational is the right word to use, but it's like very much like a task manager, like thought organizer for me. And so it again, like I log all these things that happen or things that I have to do and things that get done. And then when I journal in Logwave, I usually will have like the daily log and then Longwave side by side on my computer, using it as like a reference. So like, okay, here are like the tactical things that happen. What are my like emotions or feelings about like these things that happened, or like what am I thinking as a result of like these events that happened in my Rome page.
Wow. So you use your Rome log to influence what is somewhat of a journal, but also somewhat of a report to yourself and your closest friends in Longwave. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I mean, I would say it's closer to a journal in what I write in Longwave. Um, and usually I'll take like one or two like significant moments in my day and just sort of like expand on them. So like I'll have Rome on the left with like all the tasks that were done and like the random interactions that happened, and then from there are usually like one or two or three of note that I'll then translate into Longwave and expand on them with like my thoughts and feelings, or
Mm.
circulating those
So then
those
it's a
events.
spark then. You use the
Yeah, it's a
log as
spark.
a spark. Okay.
Yeah, it's a spark,
Wow.
a writing prompt. Yeah, it's yeah. Spark is actually a great word for it. It's sort of or like a backdrop. Also, like either of those terms fit of like how I interact between Rome and Longwave.
How would someone begin to organize a group in Longwave? I mean, I joined, but I didn't bring a group with me yet.
Yeah, so you can sign up for a group on the site, and then you can either like create an invite link, or generate or create like a joint group link and share those with like friends or family, and then they can join the group through that way. And so uh, it's very it's like it's very defined by like the group and like the group owner, and so it's uh long wave like it's dependent on like the group owner like reaching out to the friends and or family that you would want to include in your journaling group.
Have you thought about the criteria that you would encourage other people to use as they're organizing their group? Like, what kind of people would you want in the group? Would it be family, or would you choose people who are interested in X, Y, and Z, or exhibit behavior? What's a good, off the top of your head, kind of uh, uh, guideline, or maybe a mental model that you think would be good for group journaling?
Yeah, so this is such an interesting question because it's one that my partner and I talk about all the time, and around this product of like who is the target audience or who's the target user that we're going for. And we've seen all sorts of different types. And so when we started, it was mostly like friend groups. So like in college, there are like fraternities or a cappella groups or dorm groups, or even like a church club. These different like random college groups were some of our first users. And then like one of our users mentioned that she really wanted to use it with her family, and it's like a way to keep up with her family each day. And so we saw a use case for that. We also envision people who want to use it with like their fellow employees at work, and they wanted to create a group around that. That's actually again like where the idea came from, was me using it at one of my internships. And so the target group, because the app is so early, and we only have like in the tens of groups on the platform right now, it we're pretty open to the different types of groups that can get value out of this platform, and are actively seeking like groups like the one that you mentioned, of that who could get value out of the service, and trying to reach out to as many different types of groups as possible so that we can get feedback on like who are the primary user groups that get value out of Longwave.
I can totally see recovery groups and mental health type support groups being involved in this, especially in the middle of the pandemic, when it's tough to do face-to-face meetings. I just think that's fascinating, David.
Yeah, the pandemic's an interesting thing, right? Because we're all quarantined right now. We're all like siloed away from each other and having to interact through like Zoom calls, or um, game nights, or social media. And so it could be just like another solution that some might find more productive and more maybe even fulfilling, by like fleshing out like all of your thoughts of like how are you doing during this pandemic, what is work like, what is your new normal like, what's spending more time with your family like. These are all like interesting topics that we don't often get the opportunity to discuss with a lot of people, and could see like fitting or like helping out a lot of different groups of people during this time too.
Yeah. Well, you have a fascinating website, David. I would encourage anyone to, even before you go to the projects blog, to look at your interests and your core beliefs. Just such good stuff. The last one, I can't help it. It's funny. We're all morons. The answer to imposter syndrome is realizing we're all underqualified. The key is to always be willing to learn and iterate towards being less imperfect. And like, I, 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 I was in my 50s before I knew it was okay to embrace imperfection, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what journaling helps me do. So I love this. It is there. How do you remind yourself to live these truths? Because it can't be easy sometimes.
Yeah, it's sort of man, maybe this is a cop out answer, but it it sort of comes naturally to me in the sense that these are like things that I just hold. When I say like core beliefs, I consider them to be things that I like just find like fundamentally true. And so it's like, how do you know like, two is an even number or three is an odd number? You just know that that's like a truth of like the universe, that you fall back on. And so like in moments where so like taking the we're all morons one for example, and like moments where maybe I'm feeling inadequate, I just try to remind myself like hey, this is you're almost supposed to feel this way because this is a sign that you're learning. Like embrace like how stupid you feel because that means you have like so much more room to grow.
Mm, I
There's
love that.
another tactic, I guess, that I've recently implemented. Have you heard of who Brendan Burchard is?
Just enough to know that I should know who he is, but I don't.
He's like a personal coach, and he has this app on his phone that like pings him 3 or 4 times a day of like it pings him with like 3 or 4 words of like the words that he wants to like embody or uh like think of like positivity or transparency, like three like properties that want that the app reminds him each day to like strive more towards. And I decided to do something similar where instead of an app, it's like now my phone background where I like put these like 5 words, and like these 5 words are like a constant reminder. Anytime I want to like check my phone, I'm like hit in the face with this phone background. It's like, okay, I'm like now reminded of like 5 values that uh you know i'm definitely not at I'm definitely not at the optimal level of any of them, but these are like the 5 that I've chosen to iterate towards and like strive more towards each day because these are the ones I've chosen.
Is it too personal a question to ask what those 5 words are?
Not at all. There's nothing. I'm a big fan of being a public or like learning in public and sharing in public. So there's no such thing as a question that's too personal. And so the 5 that I have are transparency, energy, positivity, empathy, community. And
Dude, I
so
love that.
again, it's like I in no way think that I embody any of these words to like the fullest extent one could. But if I were to choose 5 and I were to like limit myself to like 5 values that I want to optimize for, those were the 5 that I landed on.
How does somebody get in touch with you to learn more about your projects, your Rome scripts, all of the things?
Yeah. So my personal website is like my home. It's like basically the starting point of everything. So that's davidvargas.me. I'm very active on Twitter. I'm obsessed with Twitter. Love it so much. So you can follow me there on Twitter, twitter.com/dvargas92495. And then most like social media sites, I'm on that same handle, dvargas92495.
It's been so excellent to talk to you. Do you have anything else that you want to share about journaling or Rome or community that I have been a bad interviewer and haven't asked yet?
Uh, no, thank you so much for having me here. It's been like awesome getting to talk to you, and I think you've been a great interviewer. So no need to put yourself down like that. Yeah, I think it just the only other thing is that like my DMs are usually open on Twitter, and so if you have any questions about the Rome scripts or getting started on Longwave or uh, any of my writing or anything like that, like feel free to drop me a line or just at me on Twitter and a tweet, and uh, I'm always happy to respond.
Awesome, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a blast.